Hi guys, welcome to the Late Night Drives podcast. My name is Prashast Pitti and I'm going to be one of your hosts for the next 15 or 20 minutes. Alright, let's get right into this week's episode. So, this week we're going to be talking about vehicle registration tax, or what's called the life tax of vehicles in India. Until the 2016 July Karnataka High Court ruling, you could not stay in a particular state with an out of state registered vehicle for more than 1 to 2 months without facing trouble with the local authorities. The logic of the rule being that once you have moved states, you have to repay the road tax already paid to the first state, as the new one wants a piece of the pie as you're using their facilities. The process to transfer this ownership and transfer your registration from state to state is really quite complicated. I mean, the current process involves getting first an NOC from the state in which you originally purchased your car. Then you have to actually pay the life tax for 15 years, which is calculated on the depreciated value of the car's ex showroom price in the new state that you are moving to. And then you have to go back to the original state and apply for a rebate of the life tax you already paid. And you can only imagine how long it would take you to get that rebate. So, why can't this process be easier? I mean, the only other country I could think of with so many large states as India was America. And they also have a similar ruling where if you move residences from one state to another, you do have to change your registration of your vehicle. Except theirs is a simpler process because at the end of the day, you're not paying 15 years worth of life tax. You're paying a registration fees every year, and that's a very minimal nominal fees compared to the cost of your car. And this to me makes a lot of sense. So, why can't we implement a similar sort of system here? I mean, it is thanks to that High Court ruling from Karnataka that the time frame within which you have to transfer your vehicle's registration has been increased from 1 to 2 months, which was an ambiguous time frame to begin with, to a solid 1 year now. But still, I think going through that process should be much easier. So, to discuss this and a lot more besides, today we have with us Jayant Ramanand. So Jayant has been one of my oldest friends, and he's probably one of the few people who has experience moving all over the country many, many times, and also having to deal with cops who stopped him for out-of-state registration vehicles. Yeah, I thought it'd be a fun conversation to have. Hi Jayant, how are you?
Hey Prash, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's going to be fun to talk about all these experiences. Just for context, like I've moved 9 schools in 12 years and like 6 cities in the 5 years after
That's a
these.
little ridiculous, you know that, right?
Yeah, it is, which is why I would say that I've compressed a lot of frustration around vehicle registration into a very short period of time that I've driven around. So I would say that my favorite story is that never drive an out-of-state registration car in Pune because the cops know that this person does not belong here, probably works in IT. We can get some money out of him because he doesn't speak Marathi. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but that's just how it is. Which is why in Bombay also I've driven a Haryana registration car and I've gotten a lot of hate from people around as well. But to be fair, it was like a black Ford Icon with tinted windows, which was asking for me to be stopped. So
It
I was
really
being
was. I
completely in the
mean,
clear.
what were you thinking?
Yeah, fair enough. But it's like, what are the things I need for a random check? All of those were checked. But here's what really upset me at times about that. Nobody was stopping me for the color of the car. Nobody was stopping me for like the slightly tinted windows or anything. They were stopping me for a number plate. And the number plate, I had transferred the registration of that car from Haryana to Maharashtra and paid the tax and gone through all of it. But at a superficial level, it was still a Haryana car. And a cop, unless he's like gone through a database and checked it, he's going to want to flag you down. And what this basically translates into is at least 20 to 25 minutes a week that you spend explaining to someone why you have this car and why you're driving.
I don't understand that either, right? Why would you keep your old number? Why would they let you keep your old number? Then it's just begging for the cops to stop you, like you were saying, right? So, for the listeners, why I decided to do a bit about road tax this weekend was because the Ministry of Transport recently announced that they'll be introducing a new registration series for vehicles. And basically, this new program is supposedly made to make a transfer of registrations easier. The way it works is eligible people, and we'll be coming back to the eligibility criteria and how that affects things a little later. But eligible people get to register their vehicles at a lower rate of taxation for years in the multiple of two. So whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, or 8 years. And the idea is you register it for 2 years. And when you move states, you can just re-register your vehicle in that state. And it's supposed to be easier. Now, there are a whole bunch of complications that I see with this new format. But what do you think, Jayant? How do you think this is going to play out? And what do you think the challenges are going to be for something like this?
Now you buy a car in the current pay, and then you pay the tax for the next 15 years. Now, I don't know too many other people except for you that would even own a car for 15 years. So I don't know how many people are paying tax for a car that they're never going to use it. Basically, what the new one is saying is that when you buy a car, you would buy it and then pay tax for 2 years, which for someone like me who's moved around in India a lot is great. New ruling, I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure about the execution based off of this, like you were referring to it earlier, this special group of people that would have access to it as a pilot.
Yeah, so essentially the eligibility criteria for this is also a little, I think it's a bit strange, right? That they've not opened it up for everybody. It's only for armed forces and central public sector unit companies. Armed forces already have access to go wherever they want with the registration they have. And for private individuals, they can be a part of this, but they're only eligible if they work for a company that has offices in 5 or more states, which again seems a bit pointless to me, because even like I think tech giants may have offices only in like 3 or 4 states and not the 5 that is the criteria. So don't you think that's a bit of a stupid move? Like, why not open it to everybody?
It's arbitrary. But what I do appreciate is that it's a step in the right direction. And when it comes to like things that are taking place at such a structural level, some step in the right direction is better than no step, right? Like, how long did it take from that initial 1 to 2 month ruling by the Karnataka High Court to come up to 1 year? It's like some ridiculously long period of time.
I completely agree with you. It's taken at least, I think, 3 or 4 years before that ruling came into force. But I don't know if you know this. So I was reading about how, for a long time, the way the registration system in India worked was you had to renew your registration every single year, and you got a token which you were reissued, or you were issued a fresh token and you paid your registration fees, right? And they stopped that because they required the funds at one time, so that the government has funds to do supposed road development work, which is why you paid your life 15 years worth of life tax to them. So what I don't understand is why not, since our roads are anyway developed and our government, honestly, I think they're doing a decent job of developing our highway systems and all that. But I don't think they still need funds for 15 years at a time, right? Like, I think that's just like a rut that they don't want to get out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when you're a creature of habit, I think the government is also like a creature of habit. They don't want to change things. But like coming, if I would have come at it from a purely financial lens, okay, now a depreciating asset like vehicles, okay, even in accounting, even an accountant will say, no, this car beyond 7 years is unlikely to be used. So every year the value of the car keeps coming down, right? Correct. So then 7 years, okay, fine. But 15 years, I think that's pushing it a little bit. I think I was reading this statistic which said that by 2030, India might be the largest automobile consumer in the world, based off of like a growing middle class. So it's like earlier in India, when it was a 15-year road tax, it was on like as a luxury vehicle. Now you're treating it more like a common good. So it's becoming more accessible to people. And if you're bringing down the taxation on how much someone would pay, then suddenly, like a car that was maybe a couple of lakhs beyond reach suddenly begins to come within reach of people that might actually benefit from something like this. But these are not the people that are benefiting from it at this point.
Exactly.
So it's all about a great idea, but sort of, for want of a better word, like execution. So that's what I feel like it is at this point.
I mean, honestly, I completely agree with you.
So one of the comments I heard about this, which I thought was quite I mean, I found it amusing was that this is probably going to be the new status symbol that people in India have.
An
That,
IN registration.
I have an IN registration
IN
card.
registration.
And suddenly you've taken this arbitrary thing to help improve, making it more accessible, decreasing taxation. And then you've turned it into a status symbol. So then you're going to have people cutting the queue to get in line because obviously rollouts are going to be in phases. It's not going to happen nationwide.
Yeah.
And the people, again, that would benefit are the ones for their car number N, where they wanted an IN registration. So they went ahead and got it because it was cool. And that actually brings, like I was mentioning, phased rollout comes to like this whole other operational like difficulty wherein this is a centralized thing, right? Like this earlier road transportation used to be at a state government level.
It still is. I mean, currently it's still at a state level.
Right. So that begs the question then that what does this move mean? Does it mean that now, similar to how you have SGST and CGST, you have like S road tax and C road tax? Or is it
no
that
idea.
you have to pay double? Exactly. That's the problem.
It's just
right?
complicating things, right?
You give a 2-page circular with like one formula on it, and that formula also has 2 numbers which are constant that I don't know where they came from. And suddenly
I couldn't understand it either.
Be.
Okay, so for listeners, I need to explain this idea, this thing that Jayant is talking about, these constants that Jayant is talking about. First of all, there's a 1.25%, there's a 25% multiplier to your tax rate. Okay, which means that, for example, if you're taking the registration for 2 years, and then your formula to calculate that is 1.25 into 2 divided by 15, because 15 years would be like your regular 15-year lifetime tax period, right? Where they got that 1.25 from, there is no explanation. But going back to something that you said earlier about how this comes under the purview of the state government currently, right? And I had an idea which to me makes a lot more sense than this, which is why not keep the current system as is, right? Keep the road tax system, keep everything as is, except when you're transferring your registration from state to state, whether you do it after 1 year or 2 years, or however long it is, why not give the onus onto the state governments to transfer the funds between each other? Why do we as car owners have to pay first and then ask for a rebate? Why can't the state governments handle that? I mean, it's everything is on a computer now, right? Like, how hard is it?
The simplest reason I can think of for this is that it would make our lives too simple. That's the only reason I can think of.
I just don't understand why the government doesn't try and implement something like that, because wouldn't that be so much more, like, simpler to implement rather than a whole new series of registration, and then you have the whole central versus state government debate, etc., etc. Isn't this a much simpler thing to do?
I think it is, but then that promotes like cooperation between states, and we're not very good at sharing with each other.
It's pathetic, right? It's absolutely pathetic.
And I want to touch upon what you said, that you have to lock up, you have to basically pay registration in the new state while being registered in another state. And then essentially you locked up 2 payments of like lifetime tax on your car or like 15-year tax on your car.
Yeah.
How many people like that are in a position where they would want to like take their car from one place to another would A, want to go through this, or B, have the time to go through it, or C, have the financial resources to go through it?
What ends up happening is people just sell their car before they move. I mean,
it's easier.
It's easier. It's easier, right? That's the problem.
I think that one of the reasons that this tax, I mean, at a more central level and maybe from not so much a legal perspective, is that 2 years ago was India's automobile industry was at its peak. Every year we were growing like crazy. We were going to be the future of automobiles and the center of the world when it comes to that. And then 2020 happened, and then 2021 is happening right now, and it's just trailed off completely. People are not buying cars anymore. So one of the reasons may be that, it's an oppressive tax regime that you have, wherein you're locked in and you have to run through all of these hoops. In an era where money is transferred in a matter of seconds, Like people don't want to have to wait 6 to 12 months to get their cars across. So maybe this might just mean that you buy a car, register it for 2 years, want to upgrade to the newer model of that car. So you sell that car and then you buy the new. So to some extent, it probably promotes that as well. Because
maybe honestly, that's a good point. That's
at industry level, they want to have more people make money and create jobs and all of the things that come along with the automobile industry. What I want to see about this, which is not very clear right now, is how this IN registration series is going to impact two-wheelers, because that is where like a majority of the people in India own their vehicles. So, and then it's like we're again talking about passenger vehicles, and I know that there are commercial vehicles that have all India permits. So how would an IN registration be different from an all India permit? I mean, that's a question that I have. I don't have an answer for it. I can't even find material to get an answer.
I don't think they have an answer to either.
Essentially, doing anything with the Road Transport Authority anywhere in India is like juggling fireballs while trying to trampoline in the middle of like lava. It's impossible. Like it emotionally wrecks you to have to go through that process and come out with not knowing anything about the process. You just told like go stand in that counter, go stand in that counter. So I mean, sorry, a lot of this is pent up frustration from several years.
That's completely okay. This proposal, this almost seems like somebody, and by somebody I mean like you or me, who's been given an assignment and says tomorrow is the deadline. Okay, we've known about it for 2 weeks and we're sitting to work on it tonight.
Yeah, pretty much.
Doesn't it seem like that?
It does. And it's like, here, sir, here is my final submission.
Exactly. Marks, please. And this is why we're friends, guys. This is why we're friends.
Yeah. Pretty much, man.
All right, that was Jayant Ramanand, guys. Like I said, an old friend of mine. Thanks so much for helping out, Jayant, this week. And
thanks so much, Prash, for having me. Yeah, I loved it, man. It was a lot of fun. Love chatting all things cars with you.
Thanks a lot, dude. Thanks. Take care. See you.
Thanks, Prash.
Alright guys, so as you heard, this new proposal seems to be the beginning of an idea, and obviously as and when we get more info, we'll keep you guys updated on how things are going to work out. And to keep updated, please subscribe to our social media channels. We are at Late Night Drives Podcast on Instagram. That's an L8 Night Drives Podcast, and Late Night Drives on Twitter. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. See you for the next episode. Cheers. Have a good night.